Hi, I'm Stephanie Wade with Writing at Bates, and in this short video, I will provide an overview of ethical, effective, efficient, evidence-based feedback practices. I am going to ask you to reflect on your own practices. Then I will review research about responding to students' writing, and I will guide you to plan to apply this research in ways that are ethical, effective, and efficient. I am asking you to start with reflection because our beliefs can interfere with change unless we examine them. I'm going to invite you to pause this presentation and consider the following questions, maybe even do some informal writing. Consider, what do you know about feedback? Where does that knowledge come from? What are your current feedback practices? What works? What do you and your students find challenging? In conversations with faculty and students, I often hear frustration. Faculty feel frustrated because they spend so much time giving feedback to students, yet they do not see improvement. Students feel frustrated because they don't always understand faculty feedback, and they get discouraged. In this presentation, I aim to reduce frustration by taking you on a quick tour of research about feedback and showing you how to apply this research to your practices. To begin by summarizing a chapter of a 2019 study of 169 University of Michigan students that used ecological research methods to depict the landscape of writing today. The very first chapter of this book focuses on feedback and provides two important takeaways. One, we do not always see the impact of feedback on student writing. And two, to improve the impact of our feedback, we should direct students to critically engage with the feedback. What Wilson and Post's research asks us to do as faculty members is to step back from individual assignments and look at feedback over the course of our entire class, and perhaps even look at feedback over the course of students' time in college and beyond. Some ways that we can encourage critical engagement with feedback include asking students to write cover memos where they engage in self-assessment, asking them to engage in peer review, having them reflect on the feedback they get from peer review, having them write another cover memo after they revise, having them reflect on faculty feedback, and having them compose another plan for revision. What I hope this helps you see is that even though faculty feedback is essential to the project of students' development as writers, it is one part of this ecology of constructive engagement. In other words, while giving useful feedback takes significant time, you don't have to do all of the work yourself, but rather you can organize your class so that there are multiple opportunities for students to receive feedback, to engage in self-reflection, and to engage with the feedback that they receive. Organizing classes this way does take some time up front, but it will save you plenty of time later, and I would be happy to consult about that at another time. But in the rest of this presentation, I want to focus on what you can do as faculty members to make your feedback count. Next on our tour is Nancy Summers, who has been studying feedback on student writing at Harvard since the 1980s. One important time-saving technique she recommends is to address content and surface errors separately. While it may be tempting to mark everything you see in a student's paper, her research has indicated that when students get feedback about both at the same time, they tend to only change surface errors and not get into deeper revision of content, use of evidence, and organization. In addition, Summers' research indicates that student writers are often overwhelmed by too much feedback. What this means for us is that we need to identify patterns in students' work and indicate 2 or 3 categories in which the students can continue to improve their writing. Summers' research also indicates that students benefit when faculty are specific in their feedback and when faculty engage in conversations with students across multiple drafts and papers. Next, I'm going to help you see how you can give specific feedback that encourages engagement by reviewing rhetorical approaches to feedback and taxonomies of feedback. Rhetorical approaches to feedback have two parts. One part asks you, as writers of feedback, to consider your audience, your purpose, and the context in which you're giving feedback. Your audience, obviously here, would be students at Bates College, and it's important to remember that these are young adults learning more complex material and more sophisticated ways of communicating. Your purpose, of course, is to help writers improve their understanding of course material and their writing. This is different from justifying grades. Finally, the context of writing assignments will result in different types of feedback. Feedback on early drafts should encourage revision. Feedback on final projects should emphasize lessons that writers might apply to future projects. Rhetorical approaches to feedback also invite you to use the categories of logic, emotions, and character to frame your comments to your students. I will go over that in more detail as I review taxonomies of feedback. Whether you are commenting on the substance and content of your students' work or surface features, bearing in mind these four categories of feedback can help you be more specific and help you encourage your students to critically engage with your feedback. Facilitative feedback facilitates writers' awareness of their choices and their critical and creative thinking. When you provide facilitative feedback, you want to focus on using questions as well as I statements and neutral language. Examples of facilitative feedback are comments such as, "I don't see the connection between these 2 points," or "What is the relationship between this study and your central claim?" Relativistic feedback includes comments that make connections between the writer's moves and the writer's purpose, as well as makes connections between the particular assignment and past and future coursework. Examples of relativistic feedback include comments such as, "If you aim to convince the readers of X, Y, and Z, you will need to X, Y, and Z." Or comments such as, "Please keep this in mind when we review X, Y, and Z next week and turn in a future revision." Another very important type of feedback is praise. And when we praise our students' work, we want to be as specific as possible because this encourages them to be more aware of the precise moves they are making as writers so they can make those moves again in the future. For example, comments such as, "This is a really good introduction because you get your readers' attention and establish your credibility by citing important research," can help writers see exactly what they're doing well, whereas a comment such as "good introduction" is a little too vague. As experts, we can help student writers by providing corrections on their work, but these corrections are most effective when we offer explanations. In addition, by selecting just a few areas to focus on, we can channel our energy in ways that are productive and also help our students focus on just a few concerns. For example, in a scientific lab report, your students might need to provide more details about their methods, and so you could tell them, "Please provide more details so another scientist can know exactly how to follow and replicate this experiment." Or you might correct an introduction with a literature review by letting the writer know that they need to incorporate more sources by saying, "You need to further establish your character and earn your reader's trust by bringing in more sources to show that you are aware of the scholarly conversation." While this is a lot to consider, please bear in mind Nancy Summers' research, which reminds us not to comment on every single thing we see in our students' work. This asks us to reallocate our time rather than commenting on everything we see in our students' papers. We want to take the time to reflect on their work as emerging writers and our experience as readers of their writing. As we conclude, I invite you to pause this presentation once again and consider these questions. What did you learn in this presentation? What questions emerged for you? And what next steps will you take? Please look for my follow-up presentations, one on culturally informed anti-racist editing strategies and another on using technologies for feedback. Thank you for your time. I invite you to email me with questions and also to make appointments for follow-up consultations.